This is Alabama Politics with Steve Flowers, an in-depth interview with Alabama's top political newsmakers. Now, from the studios of Troy University, here is Steve Flowers.
I'm Steve Flowers, and welcome to Alabama Politics. Folks, we're fortunate tonight to have as our guest one of my best friends in state politics, one of the good guys and popular Montgomery State Senator Will Barfoot. We call each other Cuz.
Cuz, good to be with you, Cuz.
We ken each other way off. I know we talk about this every time he's on here, but the reason I like to have Will on the show is most of our viewers are in his Senate district. I like to have he and Senator Clyde Chambers from Prattville and Senator Kirk Hatcher from Montgomery, the local state senators, on to talk about the issues after the session has just concluded, and sometimes before, to let you viewers, because most of our viewers are in the river region, and Senator Barfoot represents a good many of y'all. Let's tell our people exactly what all your district does encompass. You live in, of course, Pike Road, which is the fastest growing town in Alabama.
That's true.
And you represent the eastern part of Montgomery. Tell us kind of the bulk of what your area is.
Sure. You know, I have the honor of representing all of Crenshaw County, which is, pretty far south of when
you really work Crenshaw County too, buddy.
Good folks.
They love you down there.
Good folks. Had some good people pulling for me.
Purdue's brother helps you a lot.
No question. Tom Purdue and some other good folks down there. Crenshaw County reminds me of the Pike Road that I grew up in. They're good folks. All of Crenshaw County, about 3/4 of Montgomery County, including Pike Road, where I live and have been, was raised out there from the 70s, and then about half of Elmore County. So it's a pretty big district.
But in Montgomery, you get Wind Lakes too.
Wind Lakes go all the way down the Atlanta Highway, the way it's drawn now to Morning View, about as far as west inside the city limits as I go.
Do you go down there where the big old Fraser Memorial Church is?
I do.
That's your district?
It is. And of course, Montgomery and county, a lot of the expansion is out to Pike Road. And as you said, Pike Road's the fastest growing town in the state of Alabama. So
talking about that area, I had forgotten you went down the Atlanta Highway like that. I love John Ed Matheson.
He is he's a good man. You know, years before, I guess probably back in the 60s, he was actually the preacher at Woodland Methodist Church out in Pike Road.
Before he was Fraser.
Fraser sure was.
He was at Fraser 30 years.
He was a long time. Long time.
Will, you born and raised here in Montgomery County? Born and
raised in Montgomery County. Moved to Pike Road where all my folks on the Barfoot side were from, and moved out there in 1977 to Pike Road. And we were talking before, it sure has changed a lot since 1977.
When I thought about you being on the show this morning, when I woke up, I thought about how interesting I find that you were raised out there and grew up out there at Pike Road, and now the town just grown up around you.
It has.
You one of the few original people from that area. You were really active in the fire department too. Tell our viewers about growing up there in the Pike Road.
Yeah, well, I used to work at Willie James Kirksey. Mr. Kirksey had a little general mercantile store out there, and you could buy axe handles, overalls, shell corn, kerosene, just about anything you want.
Rural Montgomery
County. And I started there in the 6th grade. I'd get off the school bus every day and work till closing time and half day on Saturdays, and did that from 6th grade till 12th grade. And that was probably the best job I ever had.
What was old man's name?
Willie James Kirksey.
He had that store a long time?
He did. He had it a long time. And then, we passed, Senator Gudger passed the sweet potato bill this year.
Yeah.
Made it the official vegetable of the state. And we had a microphone and on the Senate floor, and I told him, I said, most people don't know this, but Barfoot's at one time were probably the largest sweet potato growers in Montgomery County.
I didn't know that.
We had somewhere between 10 and 20 acres of sweet potatoes.
Did you remember that growing up?
Oh, yeah.
Did you work the field?
I did. I was just a kid, and I don't know how much I helped. I might have gotten away, but I ate a lot of raw sweet potatoes as a kid.
I knew Joel, your uncle, before I knew you. Joel served a long time on the county commission.
He did. He was elected, I guess it was back in 1980, and served a first term, got reelected second term, and then, of course, in 1986, about halfway through his second term, Governor Hunt was elected, and asked him to come be the chairman of the Pardons and Parole Board.
That's exactly right. I remember that now. You know, Joel was a county commissioner, and I was a representative from Pike County, and we were at some political gathering here in Montgomery, and he walked up to me and says, "Steve, I'm Joel Barfoot." And I said, "I know who you are, Joel." He said, "We kenned each other." And he told me then, he said, "We kenned through your relatives in China Grove." And then I remembered I saw the Barfoot family on my grandmama's side, my great-grandmama's side. And that's why, folks, we really are kin to each other.
We are.
My ancestors came, well, China Grove in North Pike County and Pike Road in southern Montgomery are almost right there next to each other.
That's right.
So it made sense. Matter of fact, my ancestors who went to the Confederate War from China Grove, they said they've joined the Montgomery Cavalry. They said the Montgomery Cavalry came to China Grove, and my old ancestor, J.O. Grant, who went to the Civil War, said me and my father-in-law, Isaac Broxton, had a horse, and they said, "Y'all saddle up and you'll join the Montgomery Cavalry." And then he went off to the Civil War, but he was married. He came back and married Barfoot. So they were all intertwined, China Grove and Pike Road. That's why we really are kin to each other.
That's right. My daddy was born in China Grove, and
so he was born in China Grove.
He was born in China Grove.
That makes sense.
And I often wonder, you know, there's that song, I guess, from the '60s or '70s, China Grove. I wonder. Probably has nothing to do with
it. Does. It's a doper song.
I think probably didn't have anything to do with China Grove. But we really are. Of course, you know, I guess back then that's where the two interests left. I mean, I think your side of the family had all the money, and we were just poor folks on my side.
I talk about having money. Oh, I bet you grew up knowing old Bubba Trotman, didn't you?
I did.
Bubba had land right out there, didn't he?
He did, right off of Trotman Road, off of 231 there. And
he was such a gentleman, wasn't he?
He was a fine man, and you know, I guess it's been probably a year now since he passed away.
Pike Road bought his land.
Yeah.
You know, they don't tell how big Pike Road will be 20 years from now.
It has certainly grown, as I said, and we were talking about before, and again, you know, the fastest growing town in the state. And of course, we call it a town, but technically speaking, it's really a city. It meets the population for what the state statute says is a city, but it has grown.
I have old Gordon Stone on this show once a year, and we talk about how fast Pike Road's growing, and I said, "When are y'all gonna start calling yourself a city? Why you like that town stuff?" I said, "And the school's growing so big."
It is, you know. We've got 3 schools currently, and in need of more facilities out there because we're just splitting at the seam. The old intermediate school, the old historic school, was the Pike Road School going back in the 20s, and I actually have an old yearbook from Pike Road.
Did you go to it?
I did not. They had shut it down by then. I'm a graduate of went to Brubaker and then Jeff Davis High School in Montgomery.
Did people that didn't live in the city come to city schools?
No, they did. I mean, because Pike Road was its own. I don't know about school
in the
district,
county.
but county.
That's right. So that was one county school system. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Hey, what about Gordon's done a good job, hasn't he?
He has, you know, and part of that, you know, and I think it's a fine balancing act. Of course, when you have a good thing, people want to come, and when people want to come, it's hard to manage and not change why they're coming, right? I mean, we see that in the growth of the state, you know, when the population of Alabama has increased, and we're a business-friendly state, and Texas has seen that with folks from California leaving, right? And they move to Texas, but you don't want those folks to bring sometimes their politics and philosophy to mess up what they were actually chasing. So.
Well, we got a good mutual friend, old Mac McCarthy, lives out there too.
He's a good one.
Everybody lives in Pike Road now.
There's a lot of folks out there. Like I said, it's changed.
You perfect for representing them because you raised up out there,
good
representing
folks.
Pike Road. Everybody's new now. You're original. Wow. Now tell everybody about your family. You got 3 or 4 children, don't you?
I got 5 of them.
5 children.
So my oldest daughter, Erica, is married, and they actually have 2 children.
So you got your grandfather.
I'm a grandfather.
Only
twice
49
over.
years old.
49.
Your grandfather.
I'm getting to be an old man, Steve.
Well, you got grandchildren. So do they live here close by?
Lived in Auburn and moved back. Actually, live in Pike Road. He's a pharmacist. Works with Adams Drugs, so good local folks, good local place. And then so.
Does he work at that one out there in the Wind Lake?
No, works at the one across from Baptist East Hospital.
Okay. Yeah.
Copperfield, I believe they call it.
Yeah.
And then my second oldest daughter's just graduated from Reagan, just graduated from Auburn. She's working on her master's. My oldest
You
son.
named her after the president?
I did.
Did you name her that, Reagan?
I sure did. I sure did.
When Reagan was president, she was born.
Well, she was born in '98, but I was a big fan. My mother's name was Julia Ray Williamson, so we kind of incorporated her. She is Julia Reagan Barfoot. So,
but y'all always called her Reagan.
Reagan, that's what that's her name. And then my oldest son's 19. He's working some of these paper mill shutdowns going across the different states and in Alabama too. And then
What the young boy I met, you brought with you one time?
no, that was probably my youngest. That was Jeb.
Jeb.
And Jeb is 13.
He put him in the 7th grade.
He's in 7th, going into 8th, and then Ellie is my youngest daughter. She's between Bankston and
where do they go to school?
The youngest two are at Pike Road.
Good, they go to Pike Road School.
Good school out there and growing like we talked.
Does Jeb play sports? He read about politics and everything?
He's one of those guys who likes to read.
He got my book, remember?
That's exactly right. And and he's read it, by the way.
He likes those stories.
He does. He's kind of like his daddy in that regard. I've enjoyed reading it.
Hey, Will, what about so both those two young ones go to Pike Road,
They do.
Tell me about this session, though. I think the session was a success.
It was. I think there was a lot of pent-up demand. You think about it, the session before, we got shut down because of the COVID.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of important pieces of legislation that didn't have time to come up. And so you had a lot of legislation out there that got hung up last time, and some new pieces of legislation, and we got a lot done in this past session. Some important bills, I think, to our constituents. I mean, we had the boys can't play girls sports bill,
right?
And you're going to play the sport that you on your birth certificate when you're going to play.
Right.
I think it was an important piece of legislation. We had the COVID immunity liability bill that I think was one of the first ones. Senator Orr sponsored that, and we got that out there. It kind of gave some folks in the business world, the freedom to open up and make sure that what they were going to do, that they didn't have any lawsuits, that as long as they followed certain guidelines.
Right.
We also had Senator Roberts was a big sponsor of Senate floor sponsor of the federal money, not taxing that federal money.
Mm-hmm.
And you think about it, those three things right there are huge, big pieces of legislation that we got done in a relatively short period of time.
Well, Senator Barfoot, one thing too that people don't realize is, there was a lot of things left on the table because that last session last year was short because of the pandemic. But anytime you pass the budgets, you've done a good day's work. And these were good budgets.
They were, and especially in light of what's gone on during the COVID crisis. And we've got some good budget chairs in the House and the Senate, but specifically Senator Albritton, General Fund Chair, and Senator Orr, and they just do a great job of making sure that dollar can stretch, making sure it's spent wisely, and put in the appropriate column, and making sure that we can fund those areas that need funding.
Well, I was talking to those budget chairmen, the two you named in the Senate and two in the House, and they were very proud of this fact, and the Alabamians should be proud of it too, is that Alabama was not devastated by the COVID as much as some other states, and a lot of it was due to our economy is doing well, but also the fact that they've been very conservative stewards of the budget.
No question.
Y'all have done a good job of passing conservative budgets, and they were so good that both the general fund and education are the largest in state history.
Both grew. And I'll tell you something else. Now, I'd like to take credit for it. Truth of the matter, happened before I got there, is the Rolling Reserve Act, and the where some of it's set. In other words, don't just spend it because you have it.
Yeah.
And you remember President Reagan in the 80s, talked about Congress. He said some people had said they were spending like a bunch of drunken sailors, but Congress gave drunken sailors a bad name. And but I think we have done a pretty good job of making sure that those appropriations are at the right place and they're being used wisely.
I like that one.
It's a good one.
I'm going to use that one.
It's a good one.
I give you credit for it. No, give Reagan credit for it.
That's right.
Heflin used to, Howell haven't had the best sayings I've ever seen with a witty old guy. He'd say, "Now, Tree, you got to give me credit for those." So we got to give Reagan credit.
Give
for
Reagan
that.
credit. That's right.
But here's another thing too. There's some wrinkles in the education budget. Not only did you give teachers and administrators and bus drivers and everybody 2% raise, but there were some things done in there I think were good, like the extra money for math and science teachers.
Yeah.
I would think that'd be excellent for a school system like Pike Road that's growing, because we have a hard time getting math and science teachers.
That's right. You know, that's one of those. And my mother was a history teacher, so I'm not. Family full of teachers, law enforcement, farmers, and teachers. So I'm not knocking history teachers. My mother and sister were history teachers, but that is the harder, you know, the special ed,
Right.
science, math. Those teachers are harder to get and to keep, and so we gave some incentive for teachers people to get into that field of teaching. Maybe give up lucrative jobs as engineers to come in a classroom and teach. Some bonuses there and the pay increases there. So I think that's going to do our students and ultimately our state a little bit better job.
That was a wrinkle this year, wasn't it?
It was different approach this year.
I think that's good.
I do too.
Of all the things in the budget, now we've done a good job with pre-K also.
We are number one in the nation with pre-K. The past 8-10 years or so.
Now, one thing you got to give yourself credit for too is, and I think people don't think about it, you pass a lot of local bills. I assume you were the sponsor in the Senate of let the Pike Road vote to whether they're going to raise their property tax or not.
No, well, of course that started in the House, but I carried it on the floor, and you know, some people with some mixed emotions about it. The checklist that I always have to go through in my mind is, number one, is there a real problem, right? And you know, from being down there so many times, there's some made-up problems. But
Yeah.
the real problem being Pike Road is that there were about 150 to 200 kids away from maximum capacity, and that's including all 3 schools. So we could see that coming. So is there a real problem? Number two, what are the solutions to that problem? If it's solution A, B, C, and D, if solution D is money, let's check off A, B, and C to make sure we've got those. If it's still a monetary solution to it, well, what is that school system, or in this case, the school system, but what has that entity done with the money that's been given before? And if they've spent it appropriately, spent it wisely, and money's the only fix to that problem, then the last part of that equation is what do you need to get it fixed? A penny less and you hadn't solved your problem, a penny more and you've taxed somebody too much. So this is ultimately, the citizens will have an opportunity to vote as to whether or not it's going to be a bond issue to build another school out there.
Well, I think you've got so much growth. I mean, you're not the one who passed. Y'all just give them right to vote on it.
Sure, that's right.
That's all you're doing. Which reminds me of the other issue where you're really not voting for it. You just vote and let people vote on it. One of the things going on state issues, besides the budgets, that I think encompassed a lot of time in the state Senate this year, in this session, was the gambling issue. And I'm an advocate for doing something on that issue, because I just think we've already got gambling in the state. You're not voting for gambling. We're just getting some money from it. And I actually think that Governor Ivey did a wise thing this time last year, or at the beginning of her quadrennial, where she appointed a blue ribbon panel. And people on that panel were such outstanding Alabamians. And she says, y'all come back with an idea of what we'll do. And then it came back with, if you did it all encompassing, you'd raise $750 million with the casinos and sports betting, and then maybe only $150 to $200 million on the lottery only. So that was what came back and forth. But the Senate, I think, wisely passed something. My belief is, I'm not an advocate for gambling, but we already got gambling, and all you're doing as a state senator or your colleagues in the House is letting people vote on that bill, right. Let them have a right to vote. I just look at it like it's just almost foolish to let the money go out of state. It's what my whole thinking is. I would have, if it got to the people, I'd vote for it for that reason. Because, and especially you see all these people who are from counties that are on the border, like Dothan and anywhere on the border, Mobile, those places, they're just tired of people going out of state buying a lot. I didn't mean to take off the issue, but what is your take on it?
Well, I think
it passed the Senate. You helped vote for it.
Passed in the Senate.
23, need 21. You got 23 votes.
Got 23 ultimately. I think, first of all, there was a simple lottery bill 2 years ago, passed the Senate, didn't make it out of the House. last year, of course, of the session before, we kind of got shut down, and the governor had her commission going. And then this year we did pass a comprehensive bill. You know, I will agree with you about a bunch of what you said. Number one, I'm not an advocate for gambling. I'm not going to be on the State House steps and saying we got to have it. But if we are going to have it, it's got to be done right. If the
that's the issue I mentioned. I forgot to mention, yeah.
No question. The people of Alabama, if they're going to have a chance to vote on it, it's got to be something that's at least palatable, that you could say has got some teeth into it, collects revenue, which is a voluntary tax, right? Which is the best tax, is a voluntary tax. You don't want to pay it, you don't go.
That's right.
And then a big portion of that, and not a lot was mentioned in the press about it, but I believe it was SB 315, 314 or 315, was the contribution and criminal section of that. What we did was, under Alabama law, as you know, there's already a prohibition on gambling. It made a bunch of felonies out of things that we say, well, listen, we're going to put some teeth into some things. So you're not going to, you know, the guy that owns a gas station is not going to have slot machines back there and have to go down and pay a $200 fine when he's made $20,000 in a month, right? I mean, not a deterrent. But you put some felonies in there for that illegal gambling activity, and we hope that'll shut that down. So I think there was some big changes made as to, you know, cracking down on the illegal gambling portion of it. There was another portion of that where any, broadly speaking, gambling money could not be given to finance campaigns. That's a seismic change and shift.
Well, it sure is.
And
means any casinos are disallowed from giving
casinos, ancillary businesses that make money from gambling.
They're prohibited from giving to state senators?
Under not just senators, House members,
judges,
executives, judges, sheriffs.
I didn't know that.
It's a huge piece of that puzzle, and the media didn't cover a lot of part of that.
I did not know that.
Sure did. And there were 4 or 5 of us. Of course, there were lots of people who engaged, but 4 or 5 of us before it passed the Senate that were extremely engaged and had put a lot of time and effort and energy into that. We thought we passed, again, there's no perfect piece of legislation, but as good a piece on the gambling issue is that we could get out of the Senate, went to the House, and of course, you know, just wasn't able to get a vote.
My thoughts on that are that the governor has really, I know she was for it, but behind the scenes, she didn't openly endorse it. I really think for it to really pass, to get those extra 10 votes in the House and keep the 23 she's got in the Senate, she almost needs to specialize and call that in a special session and say this is important, because $750 million is nothing to sneeze at.
And you know what some of that money was delineated to go to was mental health, which we have a huge mental health problem in the state, no question about it. Before I came to meet you today, I visited with a gentleman over in the jail cell who has a hearing tomorrow, a probate mental health hearing, and no question he needs some mental health treatment. And you know, that goes on a lot, and that's costing the state of Alabama a lot of money. So some of that revenue would have been for mental health. Some of that revenue would have gone into agricultural scholarships. You know, the unused portion of any lottery money, unclaimed money, would have gone to ag scholarships. And as you know, agriculture in the state of Alabama is extremely important.
Right.
Some of that money would have gone to rural health care, rural hospitals. Crenshaw County, Elmore County, both rural hospitals that, you know, the reimbursement rates for a procedure there aren't the same as they are in Montgomery. We've got to stop that, folks. I mean, you know, they can get some of the same services in those rural hospitals, just like in Troy. And so that would help the rural hospitals. We had money going various other places, internet, broadband expansion throughout the state. Very good ideas on that. So, you know, it didn't get out of the House. We did pass it in the Senate, and ultimately it's the people's decision if we can get it to them about whether or not they want to vote yes or no on it.
Yeah, and I think that needs to be handled in a special session. We've only got about 2.5 minutes left. I was going to hit on one other thing I think the governor has got to address, and that's the prison issue. She's gone up against a loss on trying to privatize them. There's no financing for that. The deadline's passed for that. So it looks like the answer is going to have to be for the state to own the prisons and to pass a bond issue for it. some of that money from CARES and all can go for that, can't it? I mean, can't
I think so. You know, the federal government continues to kind of change move the goalpost like they did last year. You know, you'd have some guidance, and then a couple weeks later they'd change the rules on it, what you could use or couldn't use that money for. But you're right. I mean, we got Governor Ivey said at her inaugural address, and she was absolutely right. Alabama problem, we need an Alabama solution.
Right.
What we don't need is the federal government in telling us what we're going to do, how we're going to do it, and when we're going to do it.
Exactly.
So we've got to take care of that. Second issue is how do you go about doing that? Well, I think, and I think a bunch of my colleagues in the House and the Senate especially, believe that the best way to do that is a 30-year bond issue, where after that 30 years you own it. Bond rates are extremely low right now. If you go ahead and get those locked in, you can build those prisons. You know, we allocated additional $40 million 2 years ago to hire more correctional officers. Hadn't been able to hire the ones we need. Multiple reasons for that, but part of that reason is, you think about it, if you got a dorm room with 150, 200 inmates in there, and you got 2 correctional officers in there, and you're paying that correctional officer $40,000 a year, and he's risking his or her life every day they go in, there's a lot easier ways to feed your family than that way.
Right.
But the prisons aren't safe. Not safe for the guards, you know, not safe for some inmates that are in there, and we need to do something about it. We don't let the federal government take over.
No, I agree with you totally. That's got to be dealt with.
No question. And we've got state-owned land to do it.
Exactly.
I mean, you know, over in West Elmore County, we've got prison land, we've got the infrastructure already in place, and I think, you know, state-owned lands where the community has been acceptable of those prisons for years and supported them. I think that's probably the route that we should go.
Well, Will, that's exactly what I was in the legislature. I mean, 30 years ago when Wallace was governor, longer back, we had to have new prisons, and they were done. They did that with the foresight then to say, let's buy a lot of land around these prisons, because obviously, ultimately, we've got to have more prisons eventually every 30 years because population grows.
That's right.
So that land's there, like you said. Well, Senator, our time's up.
Always enjoy it.
It's always fun.
Thank you, Steve.
Appreciate you being on here. Folks, our guest tonight has been State Senator Will Barfoot, who represents all of East Montgomery County and Pike Road and Wind Lakes, but also up around Elmore and especially Crenshaw. He's one of the good guys and does a great job. He'll be running for re-election next year, as will the entire legislature. And we thank Senator Barfoot for being with us, and thank you viewers for watching. Hope you tune again next week for Alabama Politics. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Steve.
Goes about her day.